Martin Bormann was one of the more sinister members of Hitler's inner circle, but an immensely powerful member nonetheless. His role as Hitler's gatekeeper by 1945, the man everyone had to go through to gain access to the ailing Führer, was the height of his power, particularly those last weeks in battered Berlin, in the bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery garden. In many respects, Bormann was actually running things, often drafting orders on blank sheets of paper that Hitler had pre-signed, a bull-necked spider at the heart of the Nazi web, connected to the rest of the collapsing Third Reich by telephone and teleprinter. Genuinely feared and roundly disliked, but gaining more powerful as Hitler became weaker and more reliant on the brown eminence, as his enemies called him. Recently, whilst filming in Berlin, I stumbled upon an interesting survivor of the 1945 battle, Martin Bormann's headquarters, a stone's throw from the Reich Chancellery and the Führer bunker, and still perfectly intact today. Bormann was an early Nazi Party member, a former World War I artilleryman who post-war worked as an estate manager and was later jailed for a year for his part in the murder of a local schoolteacher. His accomplice in that murder was Rudolf Höss, later the infamous commandant of Auschwitz. Bormann got his start in the NSDAP working for its in-house insurance service until in July 1933, a few months after Hitler became Chancellor, Bormann was appointed Chief of Staff to Rudolf Hess, the Deputy Führer.
Die Partei ist Hitler! Hitler aber ist Deutschland, wie Deutschland Hitler ist! Hitler, Sieg! Sieg!
In this position, Bormann entered Hitler's inner circle and soon made himself completely invaluable to the Führer, providing Hitler with briefings and dealing with all manners of things, both state and private. He excelled in flattering Hitler, and was responsible for creating Obersalzberg, Hitler's private gated community above Berchtesgaden in the Bavarian Alps, where Hitler maintained his private house, the Berghof. When Hess did a bunk to Scotland in May 1941, Bormann was promoted to Hess's former duties, except that of Deputy Führer, which was given to Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, and Bormann became head of a new organization called the Party Chancellery. This was an extremely powerful position, in effect giving him administrative control over the entire Nazi Party apparatus throughout Germany, and also indicative of Hitler's divide-and-rule style of leadership, for Bormann's office was in fact in direct competition with the Reich Chancellery, which was headed by Dr. Hans Lammers, and also the Führer's Chancellery, a private chancellery of Hitler's that handled different matters from the other two, but sometimes with some overlap or conflicts between the three chancelleries over legislation or policy matters. Philipp Bühler was chief of the Führer's chancellery. However, Bormann's power would soon eclipse that of Lammers and Bühler for the simple reason that he was more personally useful to Hitler. From his lavish building projects on Hitler's behalf to his running of Hitler's personal finances and also generating more cash for Hitler. Hitler always went through Bormann when issuing orders to both his ministers and his party officials, and in 1943 Bormann was also appointed Hitler's official private secretary, which confirmed a position he had been holding unofficially since the mid-1930s. Immediately below Bormann were his two powerful deputies. The first was State Secretary Gerhard Klopfer, who would take part in the Wannsee Conference and drew up the plan for the implementation of the final solution against the Jews, and SS Gruppenführer Helmut Friedrichs. And where did Bormann's power officially reside in the government quarter of Berlin? Here, at number 54 Wilhelmstrasse. Wilhelmstrasse was once a fine street of beautiful palaces and government buildings dating back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, but a combination of Allied bombing, street fighting in the Battle of Berlin, and post-war Soviet and East German demolitions have left their mark. Almost all of the pre-war structures are gone, replaced with hideous post-war East German buildings or their modern glass replacements. Funnily enough, the largest pre-war structure to survive on Wilhelmstrasse today is Göring's Air Ministry building, a huge 1930s edifice that somehow managed to survive both the Allied bombs and the street fighting with the Soviets, and also East German wrecking balls, and is today the Federal Ministry of Finance. The other large Nazi-era building to survive near this street at Wilhelmplatz 8-9 and Mauerstrasse 45-53 is Dr. Joseph Goebbels' old propaganda ministry. The extension he made to the original 18th century building, which was knocked down after the war, still stands today and currently houses the Federal Ministry of Health and Social Security. More on these buildings in future videos. Bormann's old headquarters was originally built in 1903 and served as the liaison building between the office of the German Emperor to the government, housing the Privy Civil Cabinet as part of the Prussian Ministry of State. In 1922-32, it was the offices of the Prussian Minister-President Otto Braun, then briefly the office of the Prussian Council of State. Once Hitler came to power, the building housed Joachim von Ribbentrop and the NSDAP liaison office under Rudolf Hess, until in 1941 Bormann succeeded and the new office of the Party Chancellery was created for him. Von Ribbentrop having moved out to the Foreign Ministry building, also on Wilhelmstrasse but no longer in existence. This building was Bormann's headquarters throughout World War II, though he tended to be physically absent most of the time as he stayed extremely close to Hitler at his military headquarters or his private home. Bormann also maintained an alpine villa adjacent to Hitler's house at Obersalzberg. His deputies, however, were often present in Berlin at this building, and Bormann would return with Hitler to Berlin on the 16th of January 1945 from the Führer's last military headquarters in the west, the Adlerhorst in western Germany, from where Hitler had managed his Ardennes offensive against the Americans in the winter of 1944-45. Hitler moved back to his apartment inside the old Reich Chancellery, while Bormann maintained an apartment at his Wilhelmstrasse HQ. Hitler began sleeping in the Führer bunker beneath the new Reich Chancellery from February 1945 onwards due to British and US bombing raids on Berlin, but continued to work in his Reich Chancellery offices by day and to take his meals above ground. But then, in mid-March 1945, Hitler retired completely into his bunker, only leaving a handful of times before his death on the 30th of April. Bormann maintained a small office inside the lower bunker adjacent to Hitler's room, maintaining his extremely close proximity to the Führer until the very end, though he also returned periodically to his own headquarters across the street at 54 Wilhelmstrasse, which had its own bunker in the cellars. He was able to maintain his powerful position via the communications network throughout the rest of the crumbling Reich until the end of Hitler's life and for a day or so afterwards. Due to the Soviet threat to Berlin, Bormann organized the evacuation of government ministries south to Bavaria, including members of the Party Chancellery. A relay of planes flew personnel and documents south in an operation codenamed Seraglio and was largely successful. Bormann, having failed, along with other members of Hitler's staff, to persuade the Führer to also fly south to Obersalzberg, remained in the bunker with only 2 staff members from his office, his adjutant, SS Standartenführer Wilhelm Sander, and his secretary, Else Krüger. Bormann took part in the breakout from the bunker on the 1st to 2nd of May 1945, disappearing into history. If you want to know what became of him, I'd recommend my series investigating his strange disappearance, his possible post-war life and death in South America, and the rather murky West German plot to pretend that he died in Berlin in May 1945. I link it in the end screen, along with my investigation of Else Krüger, his secretary, who mysteriously ended up living in England post-war, married to the British Intelligence Corps officer that had interrogated her in 1945. As for Bormann's two trusted deputies, Klopfer likewise fled Berlin, and in 1946 was arrested by the US Counterintelligence Corps in Munich. A war crimes case was brought against him but collapsed due to lack of evidence, and he later died in West Germany in 1987 at the age of 81. Bormann's other powerful deputy, Friedrichs, disappeared entirely in February 1945 and was never seen again. He was declared legally dead in August 1951. Bormann's headquarters was captured by the Soviets in early May 1945. Like so many of the buildings lining Wilhelmstrasse, its elegant facade was riddled with bullet and shrapnel damage from the Battle for Berlin. In some of the holes, Soviet bullets still remain embedded in the bricks. The building was very badly damaged, and the first and second floors were largely destroyed by fire. The right side wing was partially destroyed and part of the building's roof was gone. Immediately after the war, however, it was decided by the Soviet authorities to repair the building instead of tearing it down, which was the fate for most of the edifices along Wilhelmstrasse. In the 1950s, it was used as student accommodation for Humboldt University, until in 1970 the East German government took over control, and following German unification in 1990, it was turned into the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture, which it remains today, the last of these 19th century Wilhelmstrasse edifices to survive. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.